Hey guys, Tyler here. I have finally, I think, after years of dealing with crappy, board gamey, slow, clunky, or on the other end of the spectrum, just like barely existent mass combat rules, figured out a way to handle mass combat. Mass combat's always tricky, especially when you're trying to do the 3D 4D thing, because, you can control a few characters, I think, in the 3D 4D way and switch back and forth, a la, Dungeon Crawl Classics, where you might have two, three, or if you're really lucky, four characters make it out of the funnel. I think that can be done. We'll have to try that sometime. But when it's truly mass combat, you're late into a campaign, or this is just the flavor and you just want to run, Dynasty Warriors or some other wushu style film where you've got one character that's going through huge, a full army, hundreds, thousands or more, 300, depending on what you want to simulate, or even just, zombies, zombie apocalypse. Games tend to either hand wave it a little too much, or it becomes a super bogged down, clunky thing where you feel like you're looking at the UI in an RTS game rather than actually playing a character that's there. That's all to say, I actually have a concrete solution. I'm not just musing this time for once. And that is a system agnostic framework for doing this. So, effectively, in whatever system you have, every character's turn, be that a turn because you use combat rounds or whatever, or their literal turn as players taking their characters, go around the table. You just do that as normal. Nothing changes. They can use their turn to do whatever their character would normally do. They can do that to assist the army in whatever it's doing, be that making a skill check using your game's system, making an attack roll, so, leading from the front. Think the medieval king in, plate armor leading the charge on horseback, and that first attack setting the tone for the rest of the battle, that sort of thing. It can be orating, being very clear and concise and getting people, making a tactician roll, trying to get people to move from one side to the other. It can be a heal check to assist and heal the wounded, or if you have some healing special ability like you're a cleric, you can use that ability. No matter what you end up doing, if your system would consider that a success, or if there is no success and that just gives you a flat, like in Dungeons and Dragons, the heal spells generally don't require a check or anything, they just succeed. Then you get one die added to your die pool. I'll come back to that at the end. We go around, they take all of their turns. The GM, their NPCs take all of their turns doing the same, assisting the opposing army or the opposing mass. If there is no such thing, you can have a set DC. And I'll come to what the DC is in a moment. At the end of it, every success on each side takes away successes on the other side. That way you don't have a huge die pool sitting on either end. It's advantage based, so you roll all of the dice you have remaining at the end. If you are even, if you've both got, say, 5 players and there's 5 NPCs leading the opposing army, they both do their thing. This guy's charging in. There's a guy shouting over the armies, left side, move over here. You've got the cleric dragging bodies out and recuperating them and getting them, get back in there. You're still good to go. Then you just roll 1 die per side, a d6, and that number determines how many losses in percent you have. At 5% or greater losses, the army routs. So unless you make a diplomacy check or a tactician check, or again, whatever mechanic your game uses to resolve things of stopping people from running away, then that's how it goes. The army moves back. If you're doing a hex crawl thing, that can be moving back a hex. If you're playing it a little more freeform and you don't really know what's behind that army, that could simply mean the army retreats into an unfavorable position and they keep retreating until either they have retreated past the thing that they were supposed to be defending, or they can't retreat anymore and the army fully breaks. You could also choose not to pursue the fleeing army if they're just on top of whatever it is you want right away. Say the army clashes because you want to take this fort, and it's a very important fort, and they can't really easily escape because it's a fort in the mountainside. Well, when they rout, they take 5% losses, and then they're just going to keep taking 5% losses. And for every 5% losses, have them start with a penalty die. Now, this means things snowball out of control really quickly, and that's by design. An army that has started losing starts losing very badly, very rapidly in melee combat. Will this work as well with future mass combat, modern mass combat? Maybe not. I'm not sure. That's not really the goal, and I haven't seen many people end up in situations where they need to run mass combat. If that's confusing, these mechanics, I will have them written down in a comment below. But again, let's say the players do their things. Maybe they're Dynasty Warriors, they're a high-level barbarian in Dungeons and Dragons, and they're swinging their axe around, chopping a bunch of orcs' heads off in the army, and they're just being a total badass about it. That's, one success, they have one die in their pool. Everybody else helps, great. The mage is, blasting fireballs over the area, is taking out tons of people, great. That's another die. Let's say the orcs, they also just have 2 leaders, and they both fail. They fail their attack roll, the guy's getting pushed back, pressed back by the player characters, knights that they're controlling and such. The other orc is just, his diplomacy is ineffective. He's got, goblins and whatever just running past him, ignoring his commands. They have 2 failures. So the player characters would roll 2d6, take the better result. The opposing side would roll 2d6, take the worst result. In this way, even on a losing end, a melee army is going to inflict some casualties to the winning army. And you can determine what that means, what that 2% loss is. That can mean 2% losses in broken equipment. That can mean those people are injured. That can mean they're dead, of course. So this gives you a lot of ability to play with the mass combat while keeping your system and not making things so ridiculous like a lot of mass combat systems where it's just whenever you win, the enemy army is just totally gone. You vaporized it. Greater than 5% losses are so rare historically in melee combat. So even with a D6, you're getting some pretty gnarly losses at 6%. 6% that's rough. Historically, most armies read it at like 3 to 4%, but I'm considering, we're fantasy, and a D4 is just not it doesn't give you a lot of range of losses. So, yeah. And then you'd have to keep doing it over and over and over again. And if you did want to totally crush them, I recommend that you don't just keep chasing an army to its ultimate destruction. If you have player characters that want to keep chasing that army forever, then eventually have that army meet up with somebody else or have them surrender and be like, dude, you've been chasing us for like weeks. We're running out of food here. Come on. That can be another thing those losses represent, loss of resources. That can be another reason you're fighting in mass combat. You've in a post like Dark Sun, you've managed to round up a bunch of slaves, done a slave revolt, and you're fighting against the guards. And this makes it a little bit more than just background noise, where obviously you could have the mass combat just sort of happening in the background and that be set dressing. That works, but if you do want it to be like this, I think it adds... And I'm not just talking out of my ass here either. I play tested this in my last Pathfinder First Edition session, and it went really well. We had the monk, jumping around, side-kicking dudes and doing some real hero wuxia film stuff, which is befitting of a very powerful monk character. Whereas a lot of the other characters were again orating, they were using the barbarian. You wouldn't figure was the orator, but he is very large, and so he's describing, he's using his very large size to bellow and project his voice so that over the clamor of battle they can hear him. And so I gave him a big bonus to his diplomacy check for that because I thought that was cool. It's a sort of underappreciated thing, and it worked great. It resolved what would normally be an absolute slog in 5-10 minutes, 2 rounds of that, and eventually, yeah, it was just like, okay, they're surrendering. Now you can play through the fallout of that, capturing the leader, interrogating prisoners, looting, all of that, and that can all be done in character. Or if you are more of the video gamey style, you can just have a little pop up show up, and then you take a break, go to the bathroom, whatever, do all your fantasy accounting as we call it. That's okay too, if you want to do it that way. So yeah, the written rules of that will be in the description. This is a pre-video response to Mr. Max's 40 video tomorrow, stream that he's doing tomorrow on Mass Combat. Go check that out when that happens. And Max, hopefully this gives you some ideas to seed that. Wish I could be there in person, but I've got to run another game. So, see you guys.